clothes. Got a question and a black coffee glow. From campus.
It's a beautiful day on the South Strand. Welcome to Conversations with the Hoff. I'm Steve Hoffman, your host, and with me in the studio today are the usual suspects, Randy Oporowski and Trip Detmering.
Hello.
We also have Dr. Collings joining us again today to continue our discussion on medical freedom. More specifically, we're going to talk about the use of ivermectin and other protocols that could have saved thousands of American lives during the COVID-19 pandemic. Dr. Collings graduated summa cum laude from the Pennsylvania University of Chiropractic in 1995, earning her Doctor of Chiropractic degree. She specializes in holistic, natural, and non-force approaches to health care. Welcome to the show, Dr. Collins. Lings, I always get your name wrong.
Thank you so much.
Please share with us everything you know about the so-called horse dewormer, ivermectin.
Well, to do that, we'd have to be here till tomorrow. So how about I abbreviate that a little bit and basically tell you the reason I'm having this talk is I really want to be a contribution to the people that need this information to help themselves or their loved ones heal from long COVID or vaccine injury. I don't want it to be divisive, Vaccination, is the sacred cow of medicine. For those that have been thoroughly indoctrinated into the religion of modern medicine, no amount of facts is going to change their minds. The cognitive dissonance is too great. However, if information can alleviate some suffering, because sadly, there's tons of people that don't even know that their failing health since 2020 is due to one of those two things. They're just going on with life going, geez, I'm not healthy. And a lot of that is because what people don't know is that both the vaccine and the disease, the spike protein, attacks whatever your weak link is, which is why there is such a plethora of demonstrable side effects to this thing. And no one puts two and two together because it's all over the place. But anyway, bottom line, that's what I'd like to do is I'd like to give tools. I've in the last 5 years, I've seen this do miracles, and I want to share those with people who don't know about it.
Sounds good. By the way, Conversations with the Hoff is never divisive, extremely confrontational, and what else am I trying to say?
Offensive.
Yeah, we're other things, but we're not divisive. Controversial.
I'm not accusing you. I'm not accusing you guys of being divisive. I'm accusing the subject of being divisive.
That's why it's a good discussion for Conversations with the Hoff. Continue on the information on ivermectin. I understand that somehow we didn't get all the information on that particular drug during the pandemic.
Yeah, somehow. I'll tell you how in a minute, but let me, again, like we did last time I spoke to you, I think the historical context is essential for any of these puzzle pieces to make any sense. So I just want to tell you a little bit about ivermectin. Ivermectin was discovered in 1970. A biochemist in Japan, the name of Satoshi Omura, was playing in the dirt one day, and he discovered that there was a soil bacterium. So this is naturally occurring in the dirt, which the first discovery he made is that it fought against roundworm, which is a big problem in third world countries. And here too, believe it or not. Bottom line, time went on, and it was discovered that that bacterium was effective against multiple lethal and heavy morbidity parasites like river blindness and just a whole bunch of stuff. And in the interim, it has saved literally millions of lives worldwide, primarily in the third world countries that suffer from these things more. In 1980, Merck released ivermectin. billions of doses have been safely administered. The WHO listed it as an essential medicine. The patent, and here is the key, so remember this phrase, the patent on ivermectin expired in 1986.
So it's off patent. It's off patent.
Oh yeah, long time out. Cheapo drug. In 2015, ivermectin won the Nobel Prize for Medicine, okay? In 2000, I know, that's like a big deal. In 2000, scientists in Australia from the Monash University had already shown that it had antiviral effects. Let me say that word again. Antiviral effects. At that time, they were demonstrating it against Zika, West Nile virus, and influenza.
Well,
Forward in time. Yeah, I know. This is back in 2000. Forward in time to 2020, a paper found that a single treatment, we're talking 20 cents here, boys and girls, a single treatment of ivermectin had a 5,000-fold reduction in the viral levels of COVID without any cellular toxicity. That means without any side effects. Now, this is interesting asides that none of us knew. Countries like those third world countries that were already using ivermectin for prevention of all the other stuff they had floating around, they had the lowest rates of COVID worldwide.
Yeah,
I know. The Dr. Jean Jacques Rader at Bauer Hospital in California personally treated hundreds of COVID patients with ivermectin. Not one died. Let me say that again. Not one died.
No, that's
But that's early treatment, right?
That was what he was doing wherever he got them.
Okay.
So he's a physician at Bauer Hospital, and he had his own practice. He kept working on this later on. As an interesting side note, in Ontario, this is a fun story, at a Valley View care home, the fourth floor had an outbreak of scabies. Do you know what that is? It's a skin breakout, nasty, communicable.
I actually contracted it when I was young. Yeah.
Oh, aren't you lucky, boy?
Mm-hmm.
Sorry to hear that. Yeah, it's nasty. Anyway, at the nursing home or View Care, they gave everyone ivermectin. Not one person caught COVID.
Yeah.
Everybody on the fourth floor. Then they gave the rest of the home a preventive dose of ivermectin for scabies, not for COVID, for scabies.
Mm-hmm.
Not one of them caught COVID. The staff, they did not take the ivermectin, and 50% of the staff caught COVID.
Uh-huh.
That's 50%. No, I know it's a good number. I'll give you another interesting story. In Argentina, they did a study. 788 healthcare workers were given were given ivermectin. Not one of them got COVID. The placebo group that was not given ivermectin, again, 50% of them caught COVID.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's a huge number. So in 2020, with Dr. Jean Jacques Rader's help, Dr. Pierre Corey, who I know a lot of us have heard about.
The War on
Rader,
Ivermectin.
Correct. They founded the FLCCC, which was the Frontline COVID-19 Critical Care Alliance, and they released a protocol called IMASC, very, very heavily dependent on ivermectin. By the way, just in 2025, the organization has been rebranded. It's now the Independent Medical Alliance. They're still doing their good work. On December 8th of 2020, Dr. Corey testified to a congressional Senate hearing. It was a commission chaired by Ron Johnson. Remember that name. He's very important. He testified that ivermectin obliterated COVID-19 in almost 30 studies. So what happened after that incredible testimony? Well, immediately the forces that be formed a coalition to suppress ivermectin's effectiveness. And you want to ask yourself, for the love of God, Why would they want to do that? Well, it's super,
Dr.
super
Collings,
duper
let me
simple.
interrupt you here a second because I did a recent research on Microsoft Copilot and Grok and ChatGPT. And all
I
of
love
those
them.
AI databases, when I put in the word ivermectin, it said, yeah, it's a fantastic drug, anti-parasitic, but there is no clinical evidence that it is effective against COVID-19. How can that be?
Episode 1 of Microphone Monkeys drops this Thursday, January 15th. If you are into sadism, or just pain in general, tune in on your favourite podcast platform like Spotify or Apple Podcast and more.
I'll explain that to you. And I just learned this myself recently. I'm a friend of Grok's personally. So you have to ask Grok the context of the search. So if you ask Grok a medical question, it's going to go to traditional, the main line, you know, what they're selling, what they're selling you. So you have to ask Grok, from the perspective of an alternative, holistic healthcare provider or healthcare researcher, from a non-compromised researcher, what is the answer? You're going to get a whole different world. It's fascinating. Absolutely fascinating.
That is.
Those 30 studies from 2020, they're there. You
No.
just have to get under the canceling effect of what's happening. What I was explaining, the canceling effect is very, very simple.
I have to
The
say,
emergence, pardon?
I was going to say, the first time I ever heard of ivermectin and its use in conjunction with fighting COVID-19 was when the president at the time, Trump, in his first term, came out and gave his protocol for fighting COVID-19.
Ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine.
Chloroquine, yeah.
Yep.
And
And of course, everybody made fun of him.
which seems strange because he obviously had the finest doctors in the country that were looking after the most important man in the free world. In which,
I hear ya.
Yeah, it just seemed like the narrative would have fizzled after that. But I guess what we're saying then is there's so much influence given out by big money pharma because
That's it.
yeah, as you mentioned before, because there was no money in getting out this cheap drug that was very effective.
It's more important than that. The emergency use authorization that was shortly thereafter for the vaccine could not have been issued if any alternative treatment was known for the problem of any efficacy. So if ivermectin was accepted, the 200, let me see what I got. I got a $150 to $170 billion revenues generated by that vaccine. Okay? That 150, yeah, I got that from our friend Rock, by the way. So cumulative gross sales in 2020 to present in the range of $300 billion.
And most of that was robbed from the American Treasury.
That's exactly
not from
right.
the free market. Okay.
And that's exactly right. So a coalition of powerful forces got together to make ivermectin horse paste. It was the mainstream media, the New York Times, AP, everybody went after it. Big tech, Facebook, YouTube. Now this is really even pathetic. The NIH treatment panel, the only thing that they recommended for COVID before you went into the hospital and got killed was for monoclonal antibodies only with an emergency use and no other treatment. Now, they released remdesivir right after that when Dr. Fauci paid for the study. No conflict there. It was remdesivir was so ineffective. In the middle of the study, they had to change the endpoint of it because it did nothing to reduce mortality. So they changed the end study point instead of reducing mortality to diminishing the time for recovery. Now we're talking $3,100 per course, okay? And nurses were calling it, they were calling remdesivir run, death is near. Okay, the nurses in the know, or I don't know if I said that properly, but they nicknamed remdesivir run, death is near. It was so high in horrible side effects for kidney damage. But here's the thing. Remdesivir, the star of the show there, was made by Gilead, which was a company that was Rumfeld's baby. And the entire NIH panel that was not recommending ivermectin, they had financial support from Gilead. 7 out of 12 authors with Fauci of that study got Gilead money. So let's face it, you know, it was bought and paid for. Our lives were bought and paid for by profits in pharma.
Yeah.
One farmer and
What's also interesting, Dr. Collings, I've got the treatment protocol from Dr. Vladimir Zelenko. And in the the last page, there's a warning there. Try to keep patients out of the hospital. That's interesting.
Right? Well, yeah. And off the death machines, which are the, what do they call those? To help the breathing. I can't think of the name.
Incubator or inhalator.
Yeah.
the respirators.
Respirators, yeah.
Actually,
that is the death machine.
That had a 9% survival rate. If you ended up in one of those, 9% of people survived. So it was a death sentence, absolutely. But you know, that death sentence gave the hospital, every one of those deaths that were on the machines gave the hospital an extra $100,000 profit.
Right.
I don't
Ding,
have the
ding, ding.
Yeah, back to the
Ka-ching,
basics,
ka-ching.
right?
Yeah.
Back to the basics, back to the money. Another little interesting side note, a state in India, which none of us know about, because what do we know from India? Uttar Pradesh. They have a population of 230 million people. That's about 70% of the United States population, okay?
Yeah.
The deaths dropped to nothing. Let me say that again. The deaths dropped to nothing when they added ivermectin. At the same time, in the USA, we were losing 3,000 people a day.
Wow.
I've seen the charts on both India and sub-Saharan Africa. And as far as incident rates go, because they live on top of each other, they were all going to get COVID. But the mortality rates were significantly lower than the United States because they had ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine, which they'd been using.
And they were using those before COVID. They were using those for all those nasty parasites.
Yeah.
Malaria.
Yeah, all kinds of stuff. I don't know if you still want me to talk some more. You guys want to chip in, but I just want to give a couple of examples of my personal experience with ivermectin in my practice.
Yes.
Because I think it's kind of important to get local a little bit now that we've been in India and Argentina and Ontario and everywhere else. I'm going to tell you about Surfside Beach, South Carolina.
Before you do that, let me throw in one more comment.
Please.
Now, you mentioned the clinical trials. I read Dr. Pierre Corey's book, and it's amazing that the only clinical trials that the U.S. government looked at were 6 clinical trials. All the other clinical trials done throughout the world, they basically ignored. How can they do that?
Yeah. Very simple. It didn't fit the narrative. They needed to make that buck. Let's talk $300 billion, okay?
I just want the public to know that they ignored all the other clinical trials. Our government ignored all the other clinical trials that could have saved 1 million lives. That's a very important fact.
And that's just here, 1 million lives here, because everybody followed American, what we did, everybody was doing the same thing. So, yeah, absolutely. And it's hideous. I don't want to talk about that. I didn't want to go there, because I get very emotional about that.
Well, I can understand that.
That's why I take my CBD every night.
I love that. Anyway, not CBD necessarily. I just love that you do that. So,
okay,
Nancy Mace wants to legalize that too against Alan Wilson.
does she?
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know that, but that's so secondary to my concern of people living and dying. So I just want to tell you this little thing because it's like so cute. I've had a lot of people come into my practice, and I have a way of identifying with that electromagnetic field resonance testing we talked about last time,
Oh, yeah.
whether or not they are currently being affected by the spike protein, whether they have long COVID or whether they have vaccine damage, doesn't matter. So I can tell you, and I'm getting about a 30% rate, by the way. Now, mind you, this is people that are sick coming into a doctor's office. This is not the general population, okay? They're coming in with symptoms, so they wouldn't be there. But the bottom line is other things besides that. So I absolutely recommend ivermectin as part of the healing protocol for those injuries, as well as other things. By the way, if this is all news to you and you have no idea where to get ivermectin, please PM me on Messenger, and I will be happy to give you a source that you can order it yourself very, very, very inexpensively, about 20 cents a pill and I'll be more than happy to share that with you. But what I was going to say is I've had patients come into my office with long-term and new-term Lyme's disease. Are you familiar with Lyme's disease?
Yeah, my twin brother has it.
Well, you know that Lyme's disease can be lethal. It is another thing that was canceled a long time ago because, long story, same medical stuff. But anyway, I've had 3 people with that come in this period, and I put them on a protocol of ivermectin. I told them to get it because, I'm a doctor of chiropractic. Drugs are not in my scope of practice, although in my heart, I think of ivermectin as a bacterium. I don't even think of it as a drug, which is like interesting. And they healed from Lyme's disease. And again, how I know that, not just symptomatically and not just their reports, but I have the ability to check the electromagnetic field for that, and they clear it with ivermectin. Now, what is Lyme's? That's bacterium. So we're crossing over parasites, viruses, bacterium. I'm going to tell you something about this ivermectin. You got a thought, you got something wrong with you, just take it. That's how strongly I feel about it right now. I have not seen one side effect. I've used it myself countless times. In fact, I'm taking it right this minute because if you recall, I had a cold going on and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I just wanted to share that one thing because it's really huge. And people have gotten great turnarounds with their chronic, weird, long-term COVID stuff.
There is one thing. You mentioned the spike protein.
Mm-hmm.
In our legislature right now are our glorious leaders that represent us in South Carolina. Actually, they don't. There's a bill that would eliminate all exemptions for people to not take the jab, all the religious exemptions. They want to make it mandatory in our schools, even our private schools, universities, that everybody has to take the jab. There will be no exemptions.
This has been going on since 1855. 1855, mandatory stuff for schools. And then the fight goes on between medical freedom and the powers that be, which always break down to pharma profit. That is somebody, whoever's promoting that, I don't know the people's names, we know about our fearless leader, Summer, and all that. That's just pharma money talking. That's all there is to it. They are the biggest lobbyists. I think the last number I heard was that there's 15 or 17 lobbyists per congressperson in Washington. I don't know how many we got down here.
It's just as bad in South Carolina. If you listen to conversations with the Hoff, you already know that the third branch of the South Carolina government is the lobbyist branch.
Incredible, but that's the way it works. So we have to fight that because that's just pure slavery and a death sentence. And not for everybody, but it's a death sentence for a lot of people. And, Yeah, we can't let that happen.
You mentioned
We
about
absolutely.
cleansing the body of the spike protein. What are some of the things that they recommend that you can do that will rid us of the consequences of that particular protein?
Yeah, there's a plethora of things. Dr. McCullough has 14 different supplements in his protocol. The eye mask protocol from the IMA has a whole bunch of stuff. But I just want to say one thing for the skeptics out there, and we always have that with all the brainwashing we've had. It's impossible not to be. LabCorp offers for $69 with no prescription. It's basically a spike protein test where you can find out whether this conversation even applies to you or not. If you go get that blood test and you come in at 1,000 or higher, it's something you need to address. I'll give you an example. I had a patient who developed an autoimmune disease after her shot. And she went and got this test just recently. The shot was years ago. And she had a count of 16,000 still after 5 years in her blood. So she's on a very intensive cleansing protocol. But I'm going to tell you, like everything else, you can't be eating junk food. You can't be drinking massive amounts of alcohol. You can't be dehydrated. You can't be in front of a computer screen all day long without protection. You can't be indoors without any sun. Pardon?
I said, listen to this, Randy.
You just
like
portrayed
you guys.
everybody in this room.
I figured as much. I was doing it kind of like as a joke. You can't not get any UV light and vitamin D and fresh air and ground to the earth. You can't avoid all the basics of human health and expect to recover from this assault on your body. The very first things you need to do, there's no magic pill, guys. You still have to implement health tactics. But I just want to, I don't want to, I'm talking and talking and talking. I'd like you to chime in. But
Well, I think I found out who I can blame for my 1 hour wait at LabCorp yesterday.
Thanks.
Yeah. They must have been going in there to test for that spike protein.
I do tell people about that. I think it's good for people to have their own discovery.
Yeah.
Not just listen to me and go, oh, what's that woman talking about? If you have your own facts in hand, besides that you feel miserable and that you developed this, that, and the other thing, and you have no idea where this came from because you were perfectly fine before the shot, besides all of those anecdotal things, if you have a piece of paper in your hand that says, whoa, you have a massive amount of something here that's not supposed to be there, that'll motivate you, the big you, to actually do something. I just want to say one last thing about this cognitive dissonance thing that so many of us are experiencing with this whole medical thing.
Okay.
When you believe something, it's almost like no amount of facts can dissuade you, okay? I'll give you an example. There was a large study that shows that the flu shot actually increases the risk of influenza by 27%, okay? Mm-hmm. Yet 46% of Americans still go and get their flu shot a year later. So do we observe the total loss of common sense here? And that study was that was a Cleveland study, 2025. This is not a small study.
No.
Okay, this was, and still that information's out there. And so it's a lot to fight against. That cognitive dissonance is huge.
Let me chip in.
Go ahead.
Let me chip in for a second. So there's a lot of people out there. You've already admitted that there's a lot of people out there who don't know how to get access to ivermectin. Now, I also take in my massive amount of supplements every day two things. One's called quercetin and the other one's called bromelain. How effective are those if you can't get access to ivermectin?
They're effective, but in the scope of a lousy lifestyle, they're a drop in the bucket. In other words, if you're still eating ultra-processed foods, seed oils, et cetera, they're not going to be able to do that much. Basically, they are enzymes. An enzyme, you may remember from high school, haha, is a catalyst to a chemical reaction. So, for example, you eat a hamburger, in about 48 hours, it becomes Steve. That requires millions of chemical reactions to turn the food that you eat into the 75 trillion or more cells that make up your body. If you had to do that piece by piece, we'd never live. Enzymes catalyze those reactions. Bromelain is a proteolytic, means it breaks down protein enzyme, which helps all that stuff move along.
It's a
which is
flavonoid,
also why
right?
it's, pardon?
It's a flavonoid.
Exactly, which is also why it helps with inflammation of all kinds, people who have arthritis, whatever, digestive issues, that helps break down food. And quercetin is another anti-inflammatory. But here's the thing, you have to put things in context. In the context of an exploded human interior, they're just going to be a drop in the bucket. This is why Peter McCullough has 14 different things. And this is why I don't across the board give you just do this, because you may not be the right person for that. Personally, in my practice, which is a teensy little drop in the bucket, I test everybody for what's appropriate for them and what they need. But not having access to that, the answer to your question is there are 3 organizations I recommend you look at. First of all, we talked about the Independent Medical Alliance. They're still at the leading edge of the recommendations. imahealth.org will provide you that information. We'll give you all the protocols, so everything. So in other words, there's no cookie cutter thing, Steve. I love the cookie cutter. I want a cookie cutter. Doesn't happen. There's just too many variables involved.
I just want a pill to make it better.
Guys, I know you and everybody else, dude. And listen, if I had it, I'd give it to you. Trust me. If there was such a thing, I would give it to you. This is the fantasy we've been sold by pharma since 1910. If you remember the story from last time. So yeah, no, sorry. I want to do that. I want it myself, but it's not there.
What are the other organizations, before I interrupted you, that you were going to talk about?
Not at all. The National Vaccine Information Center, which has been around since 1982, founded by a woman by the name of Barbara Lowe Fisher in response to her son being severely damaged by the DPT shot. NVIC.org. Tons of information on just about anything you can think of in the field. There's another interesting organization called LearnTheRisk.org, which will perhaps give information for people who are still on the fence and don't know, was I really damaged? Am I just getting old? That kind of thing. And those are the 3 that I recommend that are easy access and full of good information.
Well, that's great, Dr. Collings. As usual, we could talk to you for hours, but we're running out of time. So I'd like to thank you for being a repeat guest on Conversations with the Hoff. You are definitely a vast repository of medical information. And now I think our listeners should realize that the Hoff cherishes the concept of limited government, individual and economic freedom. And medical freedom is definitely a subset of those. I believe that during the COVID-19 pandemic, the true heroes of that pandemic were the teachers, hospital staff, doctors, members of the military, and others who sacrificed their careers to talk against what they call the established science. Sometimes it is important to stand up and fight the tyranny by just saying, I will not comply. Our next episode of Conversations with the Hoff we'll talk to Anna Heron of the Palmetto State
Watch.
Watch. Palmetto State Watch. It should be an interesting discussion on current activities going on in what I call Mordor on the Congaree, our state capital. And now a few words from our glorious leader, the executive producer of Liberty Crack Media, Trip Detmering.
Okay, our listeners for Conversations with the Hoff can see the links for imahealth.org, nvic.org, and learntherisk.org in the comments section, or go to libertycrackmedia.com. This has been Conversations with the Hoff.
Pull up a chair, leaning close. Got a question in a black coffee glow. From campus quads to the Capitol steps, we're talking who we are, what come next. Conversations with a Hoff, where the big ideas kick the shoes off. Liberty tradition, side by side, argue, laugh, then let it ride. Conversations with a Hoff, turn it up and turn it over in your mind. Tax to the hill or left alone. How much power do we loan? Rights on paper, rights in hand. Where do we draw that line in the sand? Conversations with a Hoff, where the big ideas kick their shoes off. Liberty tradition, side by side, argue, laugh, and let it ride. Conversations with the Hoff, turn it up and turn it over in your mind. Is it either or in between? Old school roots and a freedom dream. Pull that thread, see what you find. One more question, we're out of time. Conversations with the Hoff, where the big ideas kick the shoes off. Liberty tradition, side by side, argue, laugh, then let it ride. Conversations with the Hoff, hit subscribe and take a little time to think it through.